The fact that I got the call to do this was like a dream come true, because wordless books, wordless storytelling has been, a huge part of who I am as an artist. And to have the opportunity to then turn around and showcase some of my favorite books was just so great, particularly, from a historical point, going way back, right up to the present. And the range of work, the styles, the differences between the works, the different ways to approach a wordless book. They're all on view at the museum. If you haven't been and you can get there, please do. We're going to be talking tonight about making books, because that's ultimately what we do. The art we make are books, and individual pieces of art are one part of that. But taking those pieces and putting them on the wall and giving people a chance to see them is, it's illuminating. It's to see behind the process, more of the process, and the art that goes into them. And certainly Marla, Eric, Raúl, Molly, when they asked me, I sat down and I wrote out my list, my wish list, and it took me only as long to write it out as, I had them all right then and there. And all of you were, were part of that, because you all have been in the business a long time, and you all are masters of, you understand what a picture book does, how it works, how to put pictures together in those 32 pages or 40 pages. It's its own unique art form. And so for me, the thing that I keep asking people who have made wordless books is, why did you do it? And I would love to find an answer to why Ruth Carroll made the first US wordless picture book, What Whiskers Did, in 1932. It's in a hotbed of wordless activity between Linda Ward and graphic novelists, and the work, Henry, the Little King, Polly and her pals, in comics, daily comic strips. There was wordless activity going on. Movies were just moving into sound at that point. So there's all this stuff. And so it's not surprising there was a picture book that came into that. Why? I haven't found an answer yet. But when I run into people I can actually ask that question to, it's always interesting to hear where it came from. And a lot of time it has to do with the editor, which I found really interesting. I actually spoke to Mercer Mayer, I was asking him some stuff, and I said, so why did you do A Boy, a Dog, and a Frog? 1967, one of the, the earliest ones, still in print, spawned lots of sequels. And he just said, I had all these drawings, and I was drawing these characters and these little things, and I took them into my editor and I said, what do I do with this? I'm not sure I know how to write a story for it. And she said, you don't have to. It's going to be a wordless book. So in my experience, I saw not for kids, but I saw wordless books when I was in RISD, and just went, that's it. This this is my language. This is what I want to do. So we're going to start off by asking you guys how you came. What was it about that book, or what was the influence that made you choose to make a wordless book? And just because, Molly, it's okay. I want to start with you, because 1981, for a great lady in the Strawberry Snatcher, is on the early end of the curve. You and Don Cruz won Caldecott Honors for that book, the first wordless books to win honors. Peter Spear had won the medal in '78 for Noah's Ark. But what?
Mine wasn't
for this, because it's such an amazingly strange book. I love it.
Well, it came because it was not encouraged by an editor. It was rejected by one of the great editors, Ursula Nordstrom. And I went down there. I went to New York with a bunch of illustrations of various folk tales, and I showed her the various folktale illustrations, and she said, you you do kind of interesting work. Why don't you go home and write a book of your own? So I went home and I went for a walk in the woods, and the whole story of The Gray Lady and the Strawberry Snatcher just came up into my head. And so I started working on it. I worked on it for a year. I took it to New York and showed it to Ursula Nordstrom. I was really excited. And she said, it's about an old lady. Kids are not going to like this at all. It has no relevance to children's books at all. It's about an old lady running through the woods. And here Ursula Nordstrom was an old lady. She said, it's in full color and you're unknown, you can't do it. And it's wordless, and nobody's going to buy a wordless book. So that was the end of that.
Did she tell you?
Yeah, don't
why?
sugarcoat it.
Did she tell you why?
Yeah, she sugarcoated
would buy a
it
wordless
very
book?
sweetly. So
Yeah.
I was lucky though, and I've never heard of this of other editors. I showed it to a couple of people, including Alan Benjamin. He was then at Simon & Schuster. And he, on his own, took it to a whole bunch of other publishers and showed it to them. And he said, this is a really good book. My publisher won't let me do it. Would you like to do it? And I thought, wow. And so eventually David Ruther did it. He changed from one company to another, and the second company let him do it. But he said, you can do it, but you have to do the whole book all over again. And that took me 2.5 years. So that was it.
Wow.
So it works.
That is an incredible story. I mean, I guess you would say, well, Ursula Nordstrom, told me to get lost, but which is pretty neat. But
Yeah,
wow.
did Ursula Nordstrom tell you why she said wordless books weren't worth doing?
No, she didn't say why. And I was kind of,
Well,
what can I say? When
you know,
somebody tells
my
you,
kind of the world tells me that they don't want to do them because books are to learn how to read. I'm not saying that's the publishing world. I'm saying that's the sort of the outside world. Is that if you have this wordless picture book, number one, it happens too fast, and number two, they're not learning reading, as if a book is simply a tool to learn how to read. I mean, that's one of its functions, I suppose.
it could be that. It could be also because the book got panned at the beginning, and the New York Times review said that that the book didn't have a real story, and it was just that I was showing off what I could do as an illustrator.
God.
And
Painful.
Well, yeah,
so
it happens.
I don't know. I just
Wow.
lucked out
Wow.
by getting a Caldecott. If I hadn't gotten a Caldecott, the book would have just sunk into the bottom of the pond.
Wow. That's incredible.
Well, it makes me wonder, do you guys get a sense that there are that there's a misunderstanding of the language of pictures in a picture book? And I'm not talking about the kids that are reading them so much, but maybe those people who are reviewing them, like they don't understand the language that you're using to tell this story.
Yeah,
I think that clearly is an issue. It's a confusing thing. Well, that even happens with books with text. But when the text, all of us, most of us are brought up words. We learn to read. Words are primacy. See the words, you read them first, and then you look at the pictures. That's just the way people are. And if you take those words away, it's like, what is this? Where do I do? Where do I start?
Really? How do I think about this? Yeah.
Except that it's
and
reversed when children are the readers because they don't know how to read the words yet. So I think that's why there's a misconception sometimes about, when Eric, you asked that question about, do you think that sometimes certain people aren't really in tune to the pictures? Like I would say mostly grown-ups as opposed to children. I think that's where the divide is for me.
Which is amazing to me because we're so visually in tune to things that happen on screens. I mean, we know we can watch a sequence in a movie and understand it completely, even if there's no, words, sometimes not even any music, and we seem to be able to understand it. There's something about the page turn, that break that goes from what you see and what you're thinking and what you anticipate is going to happen. And then when you turn it, what actually happens and how you're surprised by it, that's a different thing than a sequence in a movie or if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
I think it does make sense.
You and it is definitely this divide between adults and kids, because I've met the occasional kid who doesn't quite know what to do with a wordless book, but that's really rare. And I keep asking this question: what is it? At what point, as we're growing up, do we suddenly stop seeing or looking? Because if you look at the books, all the information is there in the pictures. It's not there by accident. Every single thing in there. I'm going to make a generalization here, but all of you, as well as I, are carefully considering what's in those pictures, because it's all part of the story. It's all giving some piece of information to the person looking at them. And when you don't have text, that's what it's all about. And you really have to read the pictures. And I'm sure you've all been at a signing, or the person picks up the book and starts looking through it from the back to the front, or they're just it's like, what is this thing? I don't know. And I'll throw out the research stuff that I came across, which is really cool, is that sitting down and going through a wordless book with your kid it's likened to free play. Like if you're playing with Legos or Play-Doh or something, you just start talking and having this conversation where you're letting the child also, direct the conversation. And the amount of language is just astronomical. It's not necessarily, there's this whole, count of new words, different words, whatever, but there's also a word count between a book with text and a book without text. You start at the beginning, you read the text, you turn the page, you read the text, you get to the end, you're done with the book. With the wordless book, you go whenever you go, and you end when you end. And the amount of language, so in fact, is this great language generator. Conversely, there are no words, but it generates all these words, which I go walk around and say that, to everybody I meet in the bookstore. That'll be, take the rest of my life. So it is that weird, I don't know what to do with it. I'm not going to buy it for, little Johnny or Susie, grandparents or parents. And, partly it's understandable, but when did they, stop being able to see what's right there on the page?
Well, I feel the adults don't know how to look at pictures anymore. People are too busy. People are always running around, and many times they look at a photo and they just look at the face and they don't even know what's going on in the photo. So, but the minute you actually, because I've done this with adults being present for some presentations I've done, and they see how I speak to the children and how we get through the pictures, and they get it. For some reason, then they get into it. They're not against it. Once they know how to do it, they even take the lead. They realize, oh, this is the way I got it. And then I've seen many parents who do exactly that. They start asking questions, and that's how they start the book, with a lot of questions. What do you see here? And the child starts talking.
Yeah.
And it goes from there.
Yeah, I've innumerable times, if I've done a presentation and I go through one of the books, people will come up and say, wow, I'm so glad you did that, because I didn't know what to do with the book. And I said, well, if you liked me doing it, you should listen to a teacher do it, or a librarian, because I stand and look at them doing it and going, wow, that's my book. That's great.
When Time Flies was published, they actually, you can go to the back flap, the board, and they actually glued in something called A Parent's Guide to Time Flies for that very reason. It's just a bunch of questions that get asked. And I guess it makes sense, because most of the images we see are really specific.
Right.
Oftentimes, fine artists will complain about illustration by saying that it's not universal enough. It points to one specific moment or one specific thing or tells a story. A wordless book is more universal. It's more open to interpretation, which makes in some ways it more uncomfortable to open it up and look at it. I think that I have some of that discomfort. One of the books in the Arrival, one of the books in the show, the first time I kind of got into it, I found myself really struggling to land somewhere, to understand it through the way I understand pictures. That's what made it great, but also at the beginning, what made it a little uncomfortable.
I feel like that was the quality of that book, that was the quality of being a new arrival.
Yes, yes.
Like it created a feeling in the reader that was very much a feeling maybe an immigrant would have. And,
yes,
in a place where there was, nothing to really grab onto that already.
right.
Which I thought was such a brilliant emotional.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Yeah,
It's
such an
startling.
unbelievable. Yeah, really.
So before we get too far away from it, Molly, I got to ask how the positive negative thing came into the story. Did you always see that, leaving those spaces for the gray of the paper in there?
Yeah, yes, that was in a sense.
Just to talk about your showing off of your illustration prowess.
It was the,
like
the
the
gray
reviewers.
I felt, well, I'd been reading a whole bunch of Buddhism at that point, and I felt like we don't exist except as defined by the things around us. And so she doesn't exist except defined by the things around her. And then once I got that, then it just was fun to play with, do as much with gray, make gray a positive thing in as many ways as I possibly could. And I was going to have at the very end a gray blade of a knife that was going to cut off the tops of the strawberries, but the violence of, I didn't need a violent, especially with red strawberry juice all over.
Yeah.
So that one got cut.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear you say that, because when I was doing the gallery talks, that's what I was talking about. How here's the figure, they're only defined by their environment and what's around them and stuff. So as long as
Molly, it's again a difficult book when you go into it. It's like Macaulay's Black and White. You're thrown off a bit. But I don't think the child that's reading it is thrown off at all. I think they're magnanimous when they enter a book. I think they inhabit it and they accept the physics. They accept what's going on within that book. So an adult might have thought it was presumptuous, but I doubt any kid ever went in with that thinking.
All right, I'm going to do the screen share since we set this up, and we can take a look at a few of the pieces.
Oh yeah, nicely done there, David. The way.
Thanks. Yeah, it's pretty cool, huh?
That. Yeah.
Uh-oh. Why is it? Why can't I?
Talk amongst yourself.
Why am I sharing here?
Molly.
There we go. Thank you.
God. There you go.
Thank God. So, Molly, if you want, you can talk through some of the pages you've chose.
Yeah, you all asked us to do a sequence of 3 or 4 pictures, and so I just chose 3. So here there are 3 gray things, 4. The string bag, her dress, the sky, and the tree. And this is a real close-up because he's getting closer. She's escaping up a tree. And I was really playing with close up and far away, that I noticed every single person of you played with a whole lot in your books. That was really fun to see how you went in and out with that. So the next one is, she swung way up high on the, this is the Tarzan scene, and she swung down. Many of you used a lot of comic book sort of techniques, and Scott McCloud's book came out, Understanding Comics came out in '89, I think. And this one was done in the '80s. I hadn't seen that book. And I've reused a whole lot more of comic book sorts of things in it. And I hadn't thought in those terms yet. So this was just so that was scary, scary. Wow, the Tarzan scene. And then now just relief and calm. And it's all horizontals and
Right.
that's it.
The painting, it's almost an impasto kind of a thing. It's just full of color and texture, and set against these expanses of the paper is just so cool. And I just, because the pages keep going and get more and more, is just disappearing. So there's these huge, just negative spaces around here, which is just amazing.
This was why I had to redo the book, because I had like 4 or 5 individual pictures, individual pages with him individually doing with a strawberry snatcher on an individual page. And they said, wait a second, you've got 48 pages here. You're not going to waste 5 of them with basically gray space. So I didn't know how books worked at all when I did this. This was really my first book.
Wow.
So I
That's
had to combine him in one page.
And of course,
well,
the thing that's so brilliant about it is that it allows the viewer, the reader, your child reader, to be part of the storytelling. They meet you halfway. Everything isn't there for them to see. You're not lecturing them visually. What you're doing is giving them some things that allow them to figure out what's going on. Maybe that's the wrong way to say it, but to understand and become involved in what's going on.
But I think that's what happens with all the wordless books.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why they're so cool. That you have to figure out stuff yourself. You have to make your own story. And a lot of teachers are happy with them because they teach kids sequential narrative. But I think it's much more that you get to tell the story.
Absolutely, yeah. When as I said, things like, Lind Ward and these woodcut books are what brought me into wordless storytelling. And it was probably after I even did Tuesday, my second wordless book, that I looked around. Oh, there's other picture books without words. What did I know? So the few that I immediately saw were Anno and Snowman and Gray Lady, and I found that so inspiring because of its totally open-ended storytelling. So when I did Freefall, my first book, I've not really done another book like that. There's not a whole lot of story going on, and I got some reviews that were kind of similar to yours, like, well, what the hell is this? And excuse me, we're live. But I mean, I loved that about it. And I just got to throw this out there. For any of you who can get to the museum, not that all the art is just amazing, but if you see if you only know I had a printed copy here somewhere, a printed copy of Great Lady, go see the original art. It'll blow you away. I said this to Molly in an email, Macmillan's got to go get new digital scans of this thing done and reprint it, because when I walked in and saw those on the wall, I just went, oh my gosh, I thought I knew the book. And anyway, had to say that. Oh, I'm supposed to ask questions. So, oh yeah, somebody else has got to tell how they got into wordless. What? Yikes, we're running out of. Who wants to go? Marla?
Oh, I can say what happened to me.
Raúl. Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, an editor was part of the process.
She was, and however,
right.
I went to an exhibit. That's how it started in New York, and this is why I live in New York, because I can get to go to a lot of exhibits all the time. Photographer, I didn't really know, and he had these giant prints, and they actually built the whole, almost made out of cardboard. It looked like a temple, basically, and these giant prints of African, animals from Africa were in there, the pictures he took, and some children interacting with these animals. So that gave me the idea. I'd like to do a book with animals like that. And it took me to the story I tried to write about a boy. And I took a little from my young years in his room, drawing away, and he's drawing animals. And then he goes, because he can't go out, he's sick, he's at home. And he ends up going in a safari, but instead of hunting animals down, right, he's drawing them. He's trying to draw this. So I put together this little thing, my little mock-up thing that I did for that. And I was trying to put a story together. So I had this, right? So what I did after I had done most of it and written a story based, with dialogue and everything, the whole text, I said, I'm going to show it to my agents, see what they think before I show it to anybody. I don't want to go to an editor or anything. My agents are honest. They'll tell me, if I'm on the right track here. So I showed it to them. And their reaction was like, yeah, that's nice. But what's going on? A boy drawing animals. So what happens? I put her away. I said, well, I guess
You got
it's
the
not
Ursula
ready.
Nordstrom.
I put it away. I did that. Yeah. So I put my own agents. I put it away in a drawer forever. I was working with my editor on another book, probably a year later, Marla Wiesner. And I said, I still have that little mock-up thing I did. I'm going to show that dummy to her and see what she thinks. Just to know, so she can guide me in. And I showed it to her. And right the day I showed it to her, she said, let me look at it. That looks good. Calls me the next day. She kept it. I think we should do this. Surprise. Boom. I'm like, wow. She said, yeah, we can do this. Yes. Except that I'm going to take out the words. So I don't know if I was a great writer or a bad writer, or she wanted a wordless picture book, but I guess taking out the words wasn't a good sign in a way. I thought, but actually she wanted a wordless picture book because she thought it served that purpose perfectly. So that's how I got started, and I did the book draw that way, and we did some changes and stuff. I threw away all the text, and then I decided a lot of the stuff would be told through pictures, and I worked it out. So it worked out perfectly. I had done storyboards before. I had done other books in the past. Storyboards, I used to work at a TV station in Florida, educational television. We did storyboards. So I had an idea of how to put pictures together without words. So I didn't struggle in that sense.
I have a couple questions. One is, I really like that
I'm just going to bring up some images while you're talking.
Oh, good.
So just keep going.
That you have a difference between the child who's sick in bed and then the pictures that he makes. And I really like that difference in that the world he draws is much more real than when he's sick in bed and the story of that. But the other surprise was, and I really loved how there was I feel like wordless picture books have a lot more surprises in them than most books. And one in yours was at the very end where he's doing show and tell in the classroom. That was totally unexpected and really sweet. A really sweet aspect of it. So
yeah, thank you. Yeah, I was trying to tie up the whole thing together at the end. The boy actually made it back to school, and he had all these drawings. So what does he do with it? Put them away? Well, I should show and tell. So I decided that he brought them to school, and it's a show and tell thing, and it worked out.
So I happen to have those images here because this is something that I love when this happens. Eric did this in Time Flies as well. And again, through the gallery talks, it was fun to just point this out. So here on those opening pages is the boy drawing. And, this is unlike what we think, if you had to say, what does Raúl's work look like? Those inset drawings, I feel more typical of it, but that very, thin watercolor wash with the ink line and surrounded by the white border is great. It's a completely different use of the media, and you drew all those little insets, right? Because I was wondering if you just digitally, plugged them in there. So good for you. Good for you.
Right. And I don't know if in those days we were doing that yet. I'm sure we could have, but I wanted to draw it. Yeah, I wanted to see how.
But it's a way to. Sorry, Eric. 1 sec. It's just a way to differentiate the move from one reality to another reality. So here he is at home in his bed, and the next page we're now fully immersed into that world, which is this really richly colored approach to doing the media.
Right.
And then again, at the end,
that happens. This is the crazy thing that happens. The more naturalistic, more realistic, more volumetric pictures that are shown are the ones that, at least in these pictures, don't read as real as the line drawings. There's something more active about the line drawing, and the fact that the line drawing takes up the whole page instead of small squares give us that, the viewer, that clue that that's something different. That's not what's happening in the world. That's what's happening in the world of his mind, of his imagination. And so that flip is so interesting to me.
Yeah, and plus this use of here's this page with the border, and then when we go in here, it's just another. We've changed the look of the page. Eric, you did that in Time Flies, where we opened with the white border around the pages until the bird flies up in the top one. I don't know if you can see my cursor there. Comes flying through, and then the border actually disappears and is fading into the background as suddenly the environment becomes foliage and trees and things, and the basically you've got a metamorphosis going on as the skeleton morphs into the real dinosaur. And so now we're in this altered state of this. So it's visually, the top page here with the white border, you can see starting to bleed out, and then it returns again at the end. So it's this visual way to take you in and out of these different realities.
Right, and I had to think about that. I had to figure that out, because
and the way those. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, because when I was doing the boy, I said, okay, how do I get the boy to Africa, the Serengeti, and I'm going, do I show him in an airplane or a balloon, or how do I get him across the ocean? So this was the idea that came out. So let's take the pictures and increments, and the children, when I visit, the important thing is the children or the audience, they get it. They realize, oh yeah, he's using his mind, because I asked them what's going on here. So they realize, he's imagining, he's going somewhere. Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's really the essence of the idea. We don't have to get on a plane or a balloon or the magic thing. Right. It's just his drawings. Basically, they're literally coming out of his head. It's perfect. It's perfect.
And I suppose that's the most difficult thing about making a wordless picture book, and that is how much do you put in to lead to the next picture? Every single one of the books I've made have been filled with stuff, and then I keep removing stuff, and if it doesn't change the story at all, then that stuff shouldn't have been there in the first place, down to the point where there's no backgrounds at all. There might just be
Eric, your most dramatic picture in Time Flies is where there's nothing there except for the little feathers squirting out of the dinosaur's mouth. I mean, there's nothing else in the picture except for clouds. And that really contrasts so well with all of the terribly scary, dense ones.
Yeah. Well, that question of how far do you jump from one picture to the next, from page to page, how big a jump, are you going to leave the viewer behind? Are there clues that are going to carry you from page to page? Right. There are times when it's nice to have them come close together, but then you want to make these leaps, but you have to make sure that information, there's something there for you to latch on to. And it's a really interesting process to, have you all, I mean, sometimes I'll go, well, I really want this picture, and then where I may have had something, another big close up of something. I go, no, this one's better. Okay, now let's reorient that whole page into something else, because I actually want to come in on this one, so that like I'm not going to do that two in a row. Eric, you go back and forth between really a lot of movement, the pteranodons and the tails and stuff, and then those really simple ones where it's just the sky with a little thing. So there's that move in and out, which is, it's this, you look at those 32 pages and it's this balancing act between what's happening page to page and the grand scheme, and then within the individual pages and stuff.
Yeah, well, the thing, of course, the story tells you an enormous amount of that. It tells you how much, how close you have to be, how far away you have to be, that sort of thing. I did a book called Bone Dog, and there are scenes that happen. There's 15 seconds between the action in spreads, and then there's one where it's an entire season. It goes from summer to fall, and they're back to back. That confidence in your reader, that trust that you have in your reader, is something that you're jumping off the cliff and making wings on the way down every time you make one of those decisions. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but it's pretty obvious when it doesn't. So what do? You go back and work again. Right.
So before we, gosh, I can't believe if we run out of time, but I want to get you and Marla to what brought you, what was where did Time Flies come from? What was why this book Wordlessly?
Well, it began with words. And when there were words in it. And what I started to realize is the words in the pictures were saying the same thing, or the words weren't doing any work in the storytelling. And as I began removing the words, realized, I guess because it was my first book, I didn't have a whole lot of confidence. Although I'd been making lots of pictures, lots of pictures without any words in them, easel pictures, I was afraid to sort of make that leap. But the more I took them out, the more I realized they shouldn't have been there. So the story told me what to do with the text.
Yeah. Marla?
I'm trying to one of the things when I started working on as an illustrator, I was an illustrator of other people's books for a while before I wrote my own, and I was really fascinated by the difference between the picture story and the word story and how to make them sort of dance together. Mm-hmm. And my third book was a lullaby, Hush Little Baby, in which the lullaby that we know and the picture story that I was sort of inventing to go along with the lullaby was almost like parallel tracks, and the narratives would sort of touch down sometimes and then diverge again. And so I was really intrigued by that those different narratives. But when I did the Farmer and the Clown, when I started to think about the idea, I didn't think of it as a wordless book until I really got into the thumbnails. And I was doing little thumbnail sketches and little paginate little dummies trying to make it work. And I realized it was going to be about these two characters who look one way on the outside, but are actually a different way on the inside. And that as they revealed themselves to each other, I kind of wanted that reveal to also happen with the reader, and felt like it would be a more powerful thing to just have it happen and not be told, just to see it. Yeah. And so I thought, oh, wow, I guess maybe this is going to be a wordless book. But it wasn't my intention going into it. Yeah. And when I showed it to my editor, Alan Johnston, I showed her the little dummy that when I finally got one that was actually beginning to end and she paged through it, it was pretty rough, but you could tell, the story. And I remember she and I was a little nervous because we hadn't talked about it being a wordless book or anything that it just sort of came out of the blue that it was going to be wordless. And I remember she paged through it and then looked at me and said, "This is weird, let's do it." And so,
This is weird. Let's do it.
we're
Excellent.
off and running.
I was so impressed. I mean, everybody's books are, and then. Most of them are, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened. And you sort of expect what's going to happen. And they might be unusual stories, but yours, every single thing that happened was totally unexpected. So you had this farmer, and then suddenly there's a train in the field. And then suddenly there's a clown. And then suddenly when he washes his face is revealed as a little boy. And then suddenly, what were the other ones? Oh, you see this huge family come out of the train, which you weren't expecting because everything is so only the two individuals.
Right.
And then at the end, when the little monkey comes, it was so sweet and unexpected. It was just, and I loved how your expressions, the body and the facial expressions of everybody were so simple and so loud and clear. I mean, they're just, the emotion of the expressions was
It's good.
wonderful.
Yeah. Well, that's, we're left with, faces and body language and just the simplest
Yeah.
posture can convey so much, and different things to different people, but which is always interesting. It's like, well, what's going to be closest to what I'm thinking, but then it can take on a life of its own from someone who has a totally different set of experiences, which is what's so great. But I love Marla because you basically using 2 dots for eyes and really simple lines with just the subtlest movement, and still those characters read. When the little guy washes his face, and all of a sudden, it was basically frozen up until, and then suddenly now there's emotion. We've got the emotion brought into the little clown. That's I don't know if anybody else, I keep keep a hand mirror on my drawing table all the time, and if someone comes in and saw me sitting here going,
Yeah.
what is my eyebrow doing? What, I'm making faces, and I got a cheap full length one where sometimes I get up and I'm, it's like, what is it that conveys the thing that I'm thinking of, or the emotion?
Even getting up and just, pantomiming something, like, you almost don't, Lisa, I sometimes don't even have to see it. I just have to feel it. What am I doing?
But all your books, all the wordless books, a great amount of that great amount of that surprise comes about because of the singular characteristic of the picture book, and that's the page turn, that anticipation, moving, knowing something and moving on, the confluence of expectation and surprise. So that's what I think makes A Farmer and the Clown, at least for me, so surprising. Is it's when I think something is going to happen, and I turn the page, and it's the same characters, and they do something that's surprising, but in no way out of character. And you just, well, of course they behave that way because Marla told us they did in all those pages that lead up to it. It's just, and that's one of the glories of a picture book, is it enables us to fill in as we're turning that page.
Right. So when did the second and third one come in? At what point did you go, yo, there's more to this story?
It was 4 years.
The book did well, and that.
Yeah.
Well, New York Times, right?
The book had been out for 4 years, and I thought it was a singular book. I had no intention of telling more of the story, and then the story started kind of, spooling out, and it was like, oh, I really need to complete this. So I feel like,
well, we're so glad you did, because we got to go back to and be with those people again.
Yeah. And by the third one, there's so much more color coming in, and it's a very complex. You've got multiple characters, the love story that comes up, the with also the child relating, the monkeys in there. I love how you take, you're using the gutter to separate the characters. You know, the clown is and the monkey are over here, and the rest of the circus is over here on the other side of the gutter. And then there's one who comes over and joins them, and you know, sort of a Susie Lee kind of a thing going on there with using the physicality of the book as part of its storytelling.
I mean,
which
don't
is,
you all feel like, for me, the form of a picture book is just endlessly challenging
Oh.
and exciting and, you know,
That's-
remarkable and
you got
just-
those 32 pages, and every time you come to it, you go, what else? What can I do this time? You know,
Right.
what else can I do with it? And that's
And
that
there-
we can keep finding new things is
And there are
unbelievable.
things that happen that, like when you open a book, our first inclination is to go to the left-hand page and start reading, at least in the West, reading in that direction. But when you turn a page, you see the facing page first. That's the image that's in your mind first, and then you slide over. So how can you use that to move you to that other page to bring you back to the page that you just saw on this side?
well,
It's
and
just
there's like
endlessly interesting.
a time factor too, like you can play with.
Yeah.
You have
Oh,
that
yeah.
page turn,
Yep.
but you also have the ability to, you know, encourage a lot of time to be spent, let's say, on a particular spread, you know, or to make it go faster by, you know, where you put the images. And I don't know.
That's
I
I
mean,
yeah,
I
Have you
can't
ever
run
had-
this
Has
panel with
anybody ever had
Molly.
has anybody ever had the children write the story for you? I mean, I went to
Yeah.
a class,
Oh, yeah.
a couple of classes where the
Yeah.
teachers had the kids write, each one had written his own story, like the captions or their
Yeah.
text.
Yeah,
Which is
that
another
was-
interesting aspect of it. Kids writing
That was the
text
moment
for your
that
story.
when particularly after Tuesday, not so much freefall, but after all of a sudden, you know, you're getting all these next Tuesdays, you know, kids writing this. And you know,
Right.
I was doing it because I was going, well, Lind Ward did it, so I'm going to do it. You know, this. And then I was like, who are all these kids? What are they doing with my book? And then I was like, oh my gosh, now I understand what these are all about, because they provide the completion for the story. You know, it's different for everybody, and there's
Exactly.
this joy in retelling the story,
Exactly.
adding words to it, which is great. And that was the great revelation of the functionality with the Wordless book, is seeing kids, you know, interact with them. And that's just hysterical stuff, you know. Some of the things you get, you know, this kid's going to be in therapy for years, you know, but just nuts, you know.
Because
It's-
one of
it's
the
good.
wonders of picture books are that they're incomplete, is that they're not all, everything isn't spelled out. Every part of the story isn't told. It's up to the reader to
There is a lot to
inhabit it
fill
and
in.
move
Yeah.
around in it and make it something more.
How many
Well,
of you all looked at Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics? Because I was
Yeah.
really
yeah.
influenced by
Yeah.
that. It just,
Yeah.
it was
Have
really,
you-
Molly, have you read
I'm gonna look
Reading
at it.
Nancy?
Oh, yeah. I think we're getting
No.
because we've run over into our question and answer time. So
Okay.
I would like to do this for the next 2 hours, but let's see if there's anybody out there. Courtney, do you want to?
Yeah, and I wanted to say, I think Marla and Eric, I think did you have some images that you wanted to share with
That's
us?
all right. That's all right. We talked about it. Yeah.
Okay.
Everybody watching, go out and buy copies of their books, and then you'll see them.
Yes,
Do a
and
little shill.
and Molly, you talked about this a little bit at the beginning about the difficulty of getting getting your book published. And Kathy Mercier from our wonderful colleague from Simmons has asked, do speechless or wordless books feel risky to you?
I think that was for Molly.
oh, no, they don't. I mean, obviously, everybody here has written wordless children's books, and they've been wonderfully popular. So not anymore. I think they were at a certain time, and they're not now.
And I think this was
And books
presented.
are incredibly experimental now. People love experimental books, I think.
Yeah.
And I think the first one you do may feel like that. Matt Cordell is I'm in his illustrator group. We're in one another's illustrator group. And I remember when he brought Wolf and Snow in, and it was there was lots and lots and lots of words in it. And he was a little hesitant at first. If you're out there, Matt, I hope I'm not telling tales out of school.
Hey, come on, you're using up his material here.
Well, and
Yeah,
especially
yeah.
for everyone joining us, thanks for that's a great segue, Eric, because David's doing this chat again with more of our artists from Speechless. So on December 2nd, he'll be joined by Matthew Cordell, Barbara Lehman, and Chris Roshka for another.
Oh, great.
Wow.
So now he's a chance to get
Conversation.
back at me.
Yeah, you're in trouble.
He wouldn't do that.
That's all.
So this is a question from Sharon. What is the biggest challenge when creating a wordless picture book? What is the difference in the creative process between picture books with and without words?
Yeah, I didn't
For
even
me,
get
it's
to get
just
into
the
that.
space that words. Go ahead, David.
No, I was going to say that was something I actually didn't get to bring up, which I was interested in. What is it that's different between the two? And every time I would I would say, well, I do this. And I go, well, no, actually, I guess I would do that if I did a book with words too. It's just sort of maybe to a matter of degree. All the storytelling is focused on the pictures, and
Yeah.
For
me, it's
really
just the
heighten
space.
them.
It's just the
Go ahead.
space that the words take up.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, it's simply the color of the text that fills up the page.
Well, I feel in charge.
That
I
makes
feel
the
like I'm the
design.
master.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
I-
Raúl?
Yeah, I feel like I'm in charge. I love it. All right, I can
Yeah.
do it. I practically
Right,
do
right,
it,
right.
whatever I want for the visuals. I don't have to follow any rule. I'm
So you're
going
not
for
in
it.
charge of very much in your life. So this gives you a sense of power. Yeah.
Yeah, it gives you a sense of
Yeah.
you can take the illustration as far as you want, the visuals. And
Yeah.
of course,
Well,
the editor will tell
yeah.
you to hold, pull back, but you're free. It's some kind of, you get this freedom visually.
Right.
That's great.
It's everything it's all about the pictures, the story, every decision that I make about composition, lighting, color, everything, it's how does that affect the story? So ultimately, if you're thinking about a wordless book, make sure your story, you really know what the story is. And that will pretty much answer, a lot of the questions, as long as you can keep coming back and focusing on the essence of the story is. I go through this all the time, in books where I think I know what it is. I think I'm really close, but I find myself, I try this, I try that, I try this. And until the story clarifies, and then it kind of goes, the logic of what needs to be shown lays itself out. But every decision is, how does it affect the story?
Candy Fleming refers to it as the vital idea. I just read a book about the making of Sunday in the Park with George, and Sondheim and James Lapine, who was the guy who wrote the play, didn't really know what it was about till 3 weeks before its first performance in New York. They didn't find that vital idea, and once they did, all those sort of puzzle pieces came into place.
Right. It flows.
Well, we have a question from Kristen. She asks, how has thinking and working in pictures informed your everyday way of approaching your days?
It's fantastic.
I like that question.
Yeah.
I just want to say, like, I don't know if it's like this for all of you, but I mean, I tend to walk and look, and that helps my work. And, just, I feel like I'm taking, my eyes out for a walk too, like just, and not consciously like looking for things, but it's just really important for my process when I'm thinking things through, or I don't really know the answer, to get out and sort of, let the world kind of show me things. And I don't know if it's like that for you, but that is a part of my day.
Well, it seems obvious to artists that drawing is seeing. We the way that we engage with the world is to look at it and draw it or paint it or do that in some way. And that hasn't sort of ever changed. I mean, I think I've always been that person. But sometimes it really humbles me too, because you'll go out and you're trying to get that light on that cloud, and then you just step outside and there it is, and you go, I can't get close to this damn cloud. So you go in and I guess you wipe the cloud away. I'll make it at
Right,
night.
right.
Yeah.
Well, it's looking and seeing. It's actually looking at what's out there, and that's they're the people who don't understand a wordless book, or don't see what's in the pictures. It's you open your eyes and even it's a beautiful sunset. That's great, but I mean, I'll stop and I'll go, oh, look at that, positive, negative shape, through the trees, the way the light in the back, very geometric, just.
I was influenced a lot by,
it's like,
I was influenced a lot by movies too. Picture books, movies, constantly watching movies. Wes Anderson, for instance.
Yeah.
Every Wes Anderson movie looks like a picture book to me.
Yeah.
And when I was young, I was influenced a lot by Stanley Kubrick and people like that, and with the visuals. So one of the things I do a lot is go out and watch a lot of movies if I can, or now you can watch them on TV. You don't have to go out. But that's how I get through it, and that also helps me. Is get ideas or probably use some of what I see in a visual.
Yeah, I'll tell you this.
ever-
Well, maybe another time I'll tell you the story of how The Shining influenced Tuesday.
There you go.
I've put this in slide talks, so
That's interesting.
it's legit.
So do you guys ever have that experience when you leave a movie where the real world doesn't feel as real when you leave the theater?
Yeah.
Right?
All
That's
the time.
what I want a kid to feel when they come out of the book. I have no idea whether it's ever happened, but that would be my goal, is for them to still be a part of them, still within the world that we created.
Well,
I think it happened to me as a kid, so I guess it happens.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
it has to happen.
I would go down to our local library and just go in the stacks and look at the Time Life books on art, and the volume on the surrealists. I would just sit there, and it was a world that just encompassed me, and that's ever since that. I go, well, when I make a book, I want to. If I could have a kid react like I was reacting to the things I saw, which was, oh, how cool, that's basically the essence of it. If I was a kid, this is maybe something I would like to see. So that memory of how impactful those images were, is what drives, that what it felt like when I was a kid, try to keep that, the wonder of, oh my gosh, look at that.
And this is a great segue. I will unfortunately have to wrap up. I think all of us, on tonight are just sort of leaning towards our monitors and just grasping every single thing you're sharing with us. But Alan is on, and they're asking, do you have any standout reactions from young children that have surprised you, that reveal their ability to read the emotion of the pictures in maybe a more complex way than adults would expect?
Yes, every time.
Yes.
I do. I have this
Oh, good.
this email from and I'm just going to read it. It said, I read the book, meaning The Farmer and the Clown, to my 3-year-old granddaughter. When we were finished reading, I asked her what she was thinking. I'm thinking that the clown and the farmer will always remember each other. And then this is the grandmother saying, I agreed that they would because of all the great moments they'd shared. Her comment started a conversation about the people in our lives who have left us something tangible or intangible. My granddaughter has already lost several people that she loves, and we had a chance to remember the things they've left behind so that we're able to remember them. And this was a 3-year-old that was,
Wow.
Wow.
That
right,
surprised me.
like, and it,
Yeah.
and I just, I mean, that just really meant so much to me that this 3-year-old was able to talk to her grandmother. You know, they were able to process that feeling together, which is
It's a great one.
you know, a hard feeling. And I think that's one of the things about, you know, how children read pictures and why wordless books are so important, because, and what everybody has been saying tonight, like there's just, they're sort of a portal into things that children might not be able to express any other way, you know, and they're finding them in through a story that is touching them in some unique way. I don't know if any of you have stories like that.
Well,
I'm sure you do.
a
but-
few years ago, I did a book. I think it sold about 20 copies, and my mom bought 10, called Pumpkinhead. And it's about a boy who was born with a pumpkin for a head. And someone came up to me at a book signing and said, "I use your book in my work." And I'm thinking, yeah, what could possibly you do? And she said, "I work in a pediatric burn unit."
Oh, wow.
And who would have ever thought that you could write a book? But there was something about that. I mean, I take no credit for it, but there was something about what those children in that hospital were getting from the book that, you know, if I'm worried about what I do, I think about that, because that's why we do what we do, to enchant, to entertain, but also to somehow, I don't know, do something that is unexpected for the good of the reader.
In my case, I had a boy who the teacher asked him, you know, after this boy, the character has drawn all these animals. There was always in the story, and I always do this in most of my books, I put a little character in there that's supposed not to be anybody. You just notice he's there all the time. There was this crane here. I don't know if you can see it here.
Oh, the ibis, yeah.
Yeah. So throughout the story, he's been watching the whole proceedings there with the elephants and everything, but he's not a principal character, basically. But at the end, the teacher asked the class, what's happening here with the crane? Because they're saying goodbye here, the boy and the elephant. So the idea was that the crane was sad because the boy was going back home now. But a child says, "I know why he's crying," because the teacher asked, "Why is this? He seems to be crying here." And the boy's answer was, "Because the little boy never drew him. He drew everybody. He drew everybody else,
Really?
but he didn't." It's true.
That's
Say,
great.
"Well,
That's
you got it.
classic.
That's right. He never drew. him." Right. So
And I
they
guess my
notice things
story-
like that. Those are the things
Which
they
is-
notice.
Yeah, which is why we have to honor, and think about everything that we put into the picture book. I mean, because they're going to inhabit them. They're going to crawl inside
Right.
and look at everything multiple times. We're lucky.
I have a story that sort of builds on that, which is that when I did 1098, I brought it to the editors, and they said, "You've cut your audience in half because it's a little girl and she's Black." And I said, "That's okay. That's how I want it." And soon after it had come out, I sent it to a friend who has a little white boy. And after he'd read it, he put his feet on the little girl's feet in the picture, and he said, "Just like me." And I thought,
Yeah.
Nice.
It's brilliant.
The adults always get in the way. The children know what they're doing.
we can only get in the way.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Well, this has just been so wonderful. Thank you, David, Marla, Eric, Raúl, Molly, for sharing and talking with us tonight. And we look forward, David, to you chatting more with Matthew, Chris, and Barbara just in a couple of weeks on December 2nd. For everyone, thank you for joining us. If you want to follow the Carl and any upcoming programs and exhibitions, you can visit our website, carlmuseum.org, and follow us on social media. And of course, we'd love to welcome you here in Western Mass one day. Please come visit. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
So
Thank
wonderful.
you.
I'm happier to be making children's books.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great.
Well, it was a
Thanks.
All
pleasure.
right. Thanks.
Thanks, David.
That was
You know,
cool.
Molly,
Thank you.
I have been trying to write picture this all my life. I've been trying to write a book about why picture books work. And every time I start on the damn thing, I go to you and it's like you've already done it. And there's no way to improve on how you tell us a story. I mean, it was startling when I was, a younger artist, and today it still is
It's an
wonderful.
amazing book.
Thank you.
I
Yeah.
used
I
it
mean,
in my
it's like,
classes. It's just brilliant.
Yep.
I wanted to.
It's canon. It's
Thank you.
one of the, that and the carrot seed, maybe the two that I go to the most often in my teaching. Yep.
Thank you.
So thanks.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Really good to see you. Good to see you again, David. We'll talk
Good to
soon.
see you. Good to see everybody.
Yeah.
See you.
Marla,
I guess.
enjoy
Are we
your
done?
time.